Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be looking at capitalism versus socialism. In the United States, you have people on the left who are pushing for a socialist state, and they use various countries as examples, and you have people on the right pushing back at saying those examples are of failed states and of other varieties of forms of government that are not of socialism. So today we're going to be looking at and reacting to, and I'm going to break down after the video in a little more detail of capitalism versus socialism. This video is from Prager University and is lectured by Andy Puzder, a former CEO of Hardee's and Carl Jr. Before we get started, I would ask that if you like this content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more content like this. And now we will get into the video.
Capitalism versus socialism. We can sum up each economic system in one line. Capitalism is based on human greed. Socialism is based on human need, right? No, wrong, so wrong. It's exactly backwards. And I'll prove it to you. Been on Amazon lately? Each of the thousands of products Amazon offers represents the work of people who believe they have something you want or need. If they're right, they prosper. If they're wrong, they don't. That's how the free market works. It encourages people to improve their lives by satisfying the needs of others. No one starts a business making a thing or providing a service for themselves. They start a business to make things or provide services for others. I speak from personal experience. When I was the CEO of the company that owns Carl's Jr. and Hardee's restaurant chains, we spent millions of dollars every year trying to determine what customers wanted. If our customers didn't like something, we changed it, and fast. Because if we didn't, our competitors would, pun intended, eat us for lunch. The consumer, that's you, has the ultimate power. In effect, you vote with every dollar you spend. In a socialist economy, the government has the ultimate power. It decides what you get from the limited supply it decides should exist. Instead of millions of people making millions of decisions about what they want, a few people, government elites, decide what people should have and how much they should pay for it. Not surprisingly, they always get it wrong. Have you ever noticed that late-stage socialist failures always run out of essential items like toilet paper? Of course, this isn't a problem for those who have the right connections with the right people. Those chosen few get whatever they want, but everyone else is out of luck. Venezuela, once the richest country in South America, is the most recent example of socialism driving a prosperous country into an economic ditch. Now, maybe you think it's an unfair example. I'm not sure why, but okay. We'll ignore the fact that leftist activists celebrated it as a great socialist success, right up until it wasn't. But what about Western European countries? Don't they have socialist economies? People seem pretty happy there. Why can't we have what they have? Free healthcare, free college, stronger unions. Good question, and the answer may surprise you. There are no socialist countries in Western Europe. Most are just as capitalist as the United States. The only difference, and it's a big one, is that they offer more government benefits than the US does. We can argue about the cost of these benefits and the point at which they reduce individual initiative, thus doing more harm than good. Scandinavians have been debating those questions for years, but only a free market capitalist economy can produce the wealth necessary to sustain all of the supposedly free stuff Europeans enjoy.
I'd like to stop there because that is one argument that a lot of socialists and the people who claim they're democratic socialist, but in reality they're still socialist. That's just a fancy term to make it sound appealing to you that they put on front of socialist. That's one thing, that there's a misconception when it comes to socialism, is that all the social programs that these countries have and that in cases like the United States has, like social programs that help you, like they do have universal health care in those countries. They have forms of pensions, they have forms of government aid, and other stuff like that. Like the United States, for example, they have social programs like Medicare, Medicaid. They have um, Social Security. They have other stuff that they they give this term of free stuff to, like plowing roads and in the summer or in the winter, and the examples of people who go around and help clean up, like your state workers who maintain roads and maintenance and go out and maintain national parks and stuff like that. They said that that is free stuff, but in reality, everybody is paying taxes on it, and nothing that you receive is really free. Somebody pays for it somewhere, but they try to tell you it's free, and it's really not free. Most of that free stuff that they talk about comes through higher taxes and taking money out of your pocket and trying to make it sound like you're receiving it for free. And I think that that's a misconception that the video doesn't really point out. But before we go on, I think that that's something that is definitely needs to be addressed.
To get the free stuff, after all, you have to create enough wealth to generate enough tax revenue to pay for everything the government gives away. Without capitalism, you're Venezuela. In a 2015 speech at Harvard, Denmark's prime minister took great pains to make this point. I know that some people in the US associate the Nordic model with socialism. Therefore, I would like to make one thing clear. Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy. So when you point to Denmark as a paragon of socialism, you're really singing the praises of capitalism. The more capitalism, the less socialism you need. Look at America since 2017. A policy of lower taxes and less government regulation, that's more capitalism, has led to a robust economic expansion, something thought impossible just a few years earlier. Unemployment, notably among minority groups, typically most at risk for poverty, is at a generational low. Economic expansion gets people off welfare and into work. That's less socialism. None of this requires a degree in economics. Common sense is all you need. That's why it's so frustrating to see young people praising socialism and criticizing capitalism. It's bad enough that they're working against their own interest, better job prospects, better wages, personal freedom. But they're also working against the interest of the less fortunate. Capitalism leads to economic democracy. Socialism leads to the economic dictatorship of the elite, always and everywhere. So beware what you ask for. You just might get it. I'm Andy Puzzler, the author of The Capitalist Comeback for Prager University.
Okay, so I think that Mr. Puzzner makes a lot of good points in that video when it comes to capitalism versus socialism. Like, the one big thing that he points out is market freedom with capitalism. When it comes to capitalism, there is more entrepreneurial opportunities. People have the opportunity to enter and leave the market as they wish. So if I want to start a business selling widgets, I can enter the market. There's no monopolies because capitalism has regulations in place to push those out of the way. So I can make widgets. If I start out, obviously I'm going to start out, I have to be making them for the consumer. If I do a good job, I will succeed and I can move up and amongst competitors and become more competitive. But if I fail, then I'm going to have to leave the market and I'm going to have the ability to do so. And with that, I wasn't able to provide what the consumer was looking for. So that is going to allow another business to come along and take my place. In a socialist market, that is not the case. When it comes to socialism, the government decides who is in the market, even if it does not benefit the society. Most of the time, it does not. They decide what farmers produce crops. Who produces what when it comes to clothing, toilet paper, electronics, stuff like that? There's no move for technological advancement. So in a socialism economy, growth is slow compared to capitalism. It is a lot slower. Unemployment tends to be a lot higher, and those countries do not succeed. One thing that many democratic socialists, there's that term again, democratic, it's just the same thing as a socialist, point at countries like Venezuela, like Mr. Pusner suggested, as being failed. If you look at Venezuela, they have failed. They're not prosperous. Before they moved to a socialist economy, Venezuela was very prosperous. They were making a lot of money. They were doing a lot of good with wealth for their people. But so they have to move off of that narrative. They point at countries like Scandinavian countries, like Sweden and Switzerland. When it comes to Switzerland, they label it as a socialist country. That is not true. If anything, Switzerland is more of a capitalist economy than the United States. Now, the population of Switzerland is a lot less, so there's a lot less people you have to generate the wealth for in Switzerland, and they are able to do that through far less regulations on businesses, a more freer market than the United States. The amount of regulations in the United States that a lot of people point out and saying that it's a bad thing. If you look at a country like Switzerland, they have way less regulations, and they are able to generate enough wealth to afford those social programs, which are often labeled as socialism. But the biggest thing that you have to remember is socialism is a form of economy. It's a political movement, and it shapes a government. A social program is designed as a program within a capitalist society to provide people with to help with their basic needs. And that is why most social programs thrive, is because they have the wealth, like Mr. Pusner pointed out. When it comes to socialism, it has never succeeded. You can look almost anywhere. From the time of the late 1800s, the beginning of the 1900s, the United States has pushed back on this argument for socialism. And around that time, the United States became the wealthiest nation ever, and it has still grown to this day. If you look at any time that we've had any economic surge, whether it was the Roaring '20s through Calvin Coolidge, there was capitalism working. If you look in the '80s under President Reagan moved us towards a more capitalist society. Even President Clinton, under his economic surge after George H.W. Bush, there was an economic surge. When you look at the 2008 and 2009 recession, the drive after that has been focused more on a socialist society. It's a very moderate form of it, not to the likes of what Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, people like that want to push for. Under President Barack Obama is very moderate. He would still be considered in a form a socialist, but not to the extremes of others. And if you look at it, the growth after the 2008 recession, the 2008 recession was not at the lengths or recovery that was needed of the Great Recession. Many argue that the economy that President Reagan inherited in the 80s was worse off. There's data that proves that. And when you look at it, when it comes to in 2016 with the election of Donald Trump, no matter how you feel about him, whether you like him or not, he has been one of the best economic presidents we've ever had. He has limited regulation on businesses, on the environment. He's cut taxes to put more money in people's pockets, to put more money in businesses' pockets so they can advance their businesses, which is needed in a free market because it's constantly growing. And it led to the lowest unemployment record ever of 3.4%. It has led to the United States gaining a lot of wealth, moving towards a lot of new programs. And that is one thing that is very important, because if a socialist was to run the United States of America, they would try to implement a lot of socialist ideas that wouldn't work. We have too many people in this country where we can't, in a sense, already under capitalism, generate enough wealth to have these big socialist programs like Medicare for all, universal health care. But if you move towards a socialist idea, there's no way they could generate enough revenues. There wouldn't be enough market. There wouldn't be enough competitors in the market because they regulate that stuff. They'll be taking money from the top 1% and redistributing it amongst more people, which, if you look at it, is in a way a form of theft when it comes to taking from one and giving to another. And like when you look at it, they also want to raise the taxes to help afford this, which isn't feasible because of things like the Laffer curve, which we will discuss later on here in upcoming videos. But when you think about it, when it comes to taxes, it's better to have lower taxes because it's going to keep money in people's pockets. The push to tax anybody, whether it be poor, middle class, wealthy, top 1%, large corporations, small businesses, this push to tax anybody over 50% and take half of their wealth is unethical. It is not going to generate the revenue that people expect. And it is one of the reasons why avoiding that, like under capitalism, we've been able to become the prosperous nation that we are. And there has not been any socialist country ever rise to high wealths like the United States or even come close. And there's no country that has ever really been very successful when it comes to a socialist government. If you have any questions or would like to debate, I highly encourage that in the comments below about why you think a socialist society and socialist country for the United States moving forward is better than a capitalist idea. I welcome any comments, and I would like to thank you for your time.